This is Democracy Watch. Mark, Republicans were just dealt a blow in court that has really, really far-reaching consequences for them. So this case in Mississippi was supposed to be their meal ticket here. What happened to them instead?
They lost. And this is a really, really important case that the RNC lost. I know what people are thinking. They're thinking, well, this is some voting case in Mississippi. No, this is the case that the Republican National Committee in Washington, D.C. sent their high-priced lawyers from Washington, D.C. down to Mississippi to try to win when nobody was noticing because they thought they had an inside track to undermine vote by mail around the country. And my legal team, we saw this case, we spotted it for what it was. We got into that case on behalf of some really good voting organizations. We beat them. And so that is a big win, not just for voters in Mississippi, but around the country.
So basically, to clarify for this case, they wanted to say that any mail-in ballots that arrived after Election Day were unconstitutional, could be discarded, and then they wanted to use that as the predicate to then get a nationwide injunction against counting any ballots across the entire country after Election Day. So if that was the case, what impact would that have had on the election? It
would have had a dramatic impact. I mean, you'd be talking about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ballots not counting, like literally being thrown in the trash, right? People who otherwise cast lawful votes, but because the post office was slow, or because, they're in a state that doesn't have drop boxes, or because, whatever reason, their lawful votes wouldn't have counted. And Brian, just to tell you how big of an issue this is, they have tried this lawsuit in Illinois. They tried it in North Dakota. They've tried it in Nevada. In Nevada, they brought the Trump campaign in, right? In Nevada, they're suing. It was the RNC and the Trump campaign itself brought a lawsuit. They lost in Nevada. Their plan was, we're going to bring this case in Mississippi. It won't attract the attention that it does in a bunch of these other states. And maybe we sneak it by. And then it goes up to the Fifth Circuit, right? If it gets appealed, it goes up to the Fifth Circuit. And we all know, Brian, what happens from there. So this was a big stinging loss by a conservative judge appointed by President Bush, who just rejected their case from start to finish. And so I'm hoping it puts an end to this nonsense, dangerous theory that they have. Although, we all know that they specialize in dangerous nonsense theories.
Mark, just to clarify here, was it your firm that represented the party in this case?
Yeah. So what happened is, they bring this case against Mississippi. This is actually really interesting. There was a really insightful piece on Democracy Docket that one of the reporters wrote about this. They brought this case against Mississippi as, like I said, to try to bring a test case. The Republicans in Mississippi, I think, weren't in on the plan originally because they're like, oh, wait, the RNC doesn't want this law. We'll just repeal the law. So they start the process of being like, oh.
And RNC is like, no, keep the law.
Right, so literally the Mississippi legislature starts passing a repeal, and the RNC is like, no, don't do that, because we want to be able to bring this case and just win easily. So what happened is, my law firm, we were contacted by some plaintiffs. We jumped in, or defendants actually, we jumped in to defend this law because we're afraid Mississippi may not, although in fairness to Mississippi, they did defend the law. But we jumped in on behalf of our clients to protect this law after they contacted us. And that wound up being the thing that defeated it on the merits. This, for all of the right wingers out there who are always like, oh, Elias, he wins on standing, or this procedure. This was on the merits. The court, the judge found on the merits that the RNC lawsuit was wrong. It was wrong on the law.
Well, again, that underscores the importance of the work that you and your team are doing right now in the courts. So for those watching, a very small step that we can all take to support this invaluable work is to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting in elections. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Again, it doesn't cost us anything. It is just a small step to show some support for this very important work that Mark and his team are doing. Mark, what kinds of voters would be most impacted if this law got struck down?
Okay, so I'd put it into two categories. The first is that we know that these ballot receipt deadline laws, which is what we call them, they disproportionately affect young voters and minority voters. Why? because those two are the two populations that tend to have the worst mail service, they also oftentimes cast their ballots later, closer to election day, rather than earlier. So demographically, that's sort of one way to think about it. The other is that it would greatly impact overseas and military voters. So one of the things about this effort is, the people who oftentimes rely on these deadlines are members of the uniformed military and their families who are stationed overseas, and they really have very slow mail service. They have very slow mail service. So this is part of a disturbing trend by Republicans and their allies to do things that, frankly, really target in negative ways our men and women serving in uniform overseas. We have, this effort on these laws. We saw after 2022, a lawsuit by some conservatives to literally try to throw out overseas military ballots. And my law firm, we got involved and defeated that. And of course, most recently, in Michigan, we have seen a lawsuit by the Republican Party to try to say that veterans can't get registered at the VA. I mean, why on earth would Republicans target veterans trying to get registered at the VA?
Mark, this is all so bizarre to me because we've been told that the Republicans are the party of the military and and they beat their chests about supporting the troops. So something just isn't adding up here. It is so bizarre that the party of the military, just like how they're the party of family values, the party of states' rights, the party of fiscal responsibility, the party of the Constitution, doesn't seem to be able to comport with their own branding.
The party of Donald Trump is not the party of the military, and you know that, and I know that, right? This is a guy who denigrated war heroes. Right, John McCain.
Yeah.
He called people who serve in the military suckers. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he has shown nothing but contempt for people who have served their country. So is it any real surprise that his RNC, run by his handpicked chair and his vice chair, who is his daughter-in-law, who I know, as I always point out, you are a big fan of her music career.
If I had a lighter right here, I'd be waving it right now.
Right. Is it any surprise that they don't care, that they show this kind of level of hypocrisy in targeting military voters?
Of course not. Is there any chance, and I have to ask this because we've done enough episodes of Democracy Watch that this is the obvious next question, is there any chance that Republicans can appeal their loss in this case and still get that nationwide injunction that they're seeking?
Look, I mean, I think that their plan has been to go to the Fifth Circuit, to appeal to the Fifth Circuit. It is a very conservative circuit. That there's no question about that. And we have seen in the last Supreme Court term a number of times where even this very conservative Supreme Court found that the Fifth Circuit went too far on many cases, and not necessarily voting cases, but other cases. And so, I can promise everyone watching, we are going to fight tooth and nail, whether it is in the trial court where we won, whether it is in the Fifth Circuit on appeal, whether it's in the U.S. Supreme Court, to not let that happen, to not let them win this case, to not let them disenfranchise people who want to vote by mail. But that is why we fight every day in court, and that is the commitment I can make.
And just as a quick aside, for people wondering what the importance is for voting, if we look at the Fifth Circuit and the 11th Circuit, which are these historically very, very conservative courts, these judges don't live forever. And the only way we get new judges to take their places when they do retire or pass away is if we have a Democratic president who's actually in office. So if for no other reason than to vote for Kamala Harris in this upcoming election, when we look at these conservative courts who are in many ways the stopgaps, the safety valves for these Republicans looking to pass this kind of dangerous legislation, that is why. It is the prospect of flipping some of these very anti-democratic, corrupt courts back to a pro-democracy majority, and the only way to do that is to make sure that we have Democrats in office to actually appoint those judges.
Yeah, and let me add my voice to that, because this comes up from time to time. Before any of you complain about anything, make sure you are registered to vote. Before you complain about some politician's position on something that doesn't completely align with yours, make sure you have a plan to vote for Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party from top to bottom. Make sure you have a plan for every one of your friends and families to know to vote, to be registered, and that they are going to vote for Kamala Harris for president, and Democrats for Senate, for governor, for state house, for Congress, for mayors. Because if you care about democracy in this country, if you care about free and fair elections, or if you care about any of the other issues that are central to your life, you have to make sure that Kamala Harris is the president. You have to make sure that she has a Senate and a House that she can govern with. And it is only when we have those things in place that I will start to listen to your concerns about where you would do things a little bit different or a little bit one way or the other.
Yeah, well said. Let's finish off with this. Marc, it really does seem like Republicans are going all in on battling mail ballots, the very concept of mail ballots. So do you have any worry that Democrats do disproportionately rely on them and therefore face greater risk at being disenfranchised if Republicans do manage to find even one single judge who's willing to do their bidding?
Look, I worry about everything. I mean, part of my job is to worry about every aspect of the voting process, from voter registration to final certification. And there's a lot of steps in between that I can worry about. You and I have done, more than 150 episodes. So we got the video to prove how much you and I worry about a lot of things that the mainstream media ignores. And kudos, Brian, to you, because both in this series, but also when you talk to Glenn, the videos you do yourself, you care about the stuff that people ought to be caring about, and the mainstream media should be spending more time on than the stuff they are. But yes, I worry about all of it. Okay, and but the fact is that the way in which we deal with that is by making sure that everyone is registered and they vote. If you want to vote in person, vote in person. If you want to vote early, by golly, vote early. I love early voting. And if you want to vote by mail and have confidence that it will count. But the most important thing is I don't want to hear any excuses about why you didn't vote and why you weren't registered in time. So make sure you're registered, make sure you vote.
Perfectly put. We will leave off there. Again, for those looking to support the invaluable work, the incredibly important work that Marc and his team are doing right now in the courts, which, again, is ground zero for all of the election subversion efforts by the Republicans, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.